In many ways, the disclaimers to these videos are kind of the most important parts. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that certain types, when unhealthy, might be more likely to resemble or actually display certain conditions. But equally, that can be a dangerous assumption to make. Any person or type can be a narcissist, if they try hard enough, of course. However, there do seem to be different variants of it. The same underlying pathology, just different ways of manifesting. Some of these might be more pop culture terms than diagnostic ones, but I'm curious to see whether certain types are more likely to be certain kinds of narcissists, if they happen to go dark in that way. It's entirely possible that there are much more, but here are 4 categories that are often mentioned. Grandiose. In many ways, this is the stereotypical thing we imagine when thinking about a narcissist. Arrogant, in your face about it, and attention-seeking. They are exploitative, self-centered, and spotlight hogging. Kind of like an obnoxious celebrity, regardless of whether they are actually celebrities or not. Malignant. These guys are probably the most close to being psychopathic in their behavior. There's a strong overlap there. Although all of the people in these different categories are dangerous by definition, maybe these ones are the most overtly destructive. Perhaps they are the most obvious to spot as well, for that reason. Covert. These are people who are perpetually, seemingly, victimized by the world. Probably the most difficult to recognize for what they are. They'll be characterized by a level of passive aggressiveness, blaming external factors for, well, everything, and at least at first, seeming quite sympathetic. You might feel like they need to be looked after, which is a mistake. Communal. This is the archetypical saintly figure. Someone who is so virtuous that it's clear, or not so clear sometimes, that there's something off. It's too good to be true. Rather than feeling a genuine sense of compassion for the people they're helping, they might actually look down on them in some ways. They flaunt their apparent charitable nature and might indeed be doing good, but not necessarily for good reasons. Okay, ESTPs. Although I can picture ESTPs being extremely aggressive, malignant narcissists, I would say that Grandiose is more likely. ESTPs can definitely be forceful, but as much as that, they can also simply desire to be on the receiving end of sensory experiences. They enjoy a life of stimulation, or in this case, adoration and attention. Charming, thrill-seeking, and superficial. I can see ESTPs being grandiose narcissists who live for that supply in the moment without thinking too much about the long term or the consequences of whatever they might be doing. In the past, I think I've said that ESTPs are the type that most line up with being psychopaths. I'm not sure whether the same applies for narcissism, but maybe. I'm going to put them in the grandiose category. Let's do ISTP next. ISTPs could be in a few of these actually. Not sure whether that's a compliment or not. I've noticed for some reason ISTPs can lean towards being nihilistic. If you are an ISTP and you've noticed this trend, definitely let me know down below in the comments. I'm not sure why that's the case exactly. They're also equally likely to be misanthropic by virtue of their frequent annoyance with humans. That imbalance with TI and FE, but also having NE as a blind spot, I can see why that would translate into seeing lots of negative possibilities, as opposed to the more optimistic kind of NE that types with it higher would have. This points me towards putting them in the covert category. That's really the only place you could put a misanthropic nihilist who still somehow has a high opinion of themselves. So I'll put ISTPs in covert. Let's go for ENFJ next. As FE dominant types, ENFJs are naturally focused on other people. That's something that is inextricable from them. So both the saintly and sinner-y versions of them will gravitate towards something social and people-focused in nature. Extroverted feeling is a strange function because it makes you a hive mind or hive heart with the people around you. A dark ENFJ will feed off the emotions of people around them in a more unpleasant kind of way. They also, unsurprisingly, care a great deal about what other people think of them. Hardly surprising if this is a narcissistic ENFJ, I know. Since they are social, people-oriented, have excellent interpersonal skills, and desire that emotional feedback from people, I think they're going to be in the communal variant. They're going to want to be seen helping people, giving back to the community, being a source of support to other people. This could be a sleazy politician who runs on a platform of some kind of social justice, or a philanthropist who is apparently charitable, yet nonetheless still extremely wealthy. Or it could be something as day-to-day as someone volunteering in their local community. So I think ENFJs belong in the communal category. Okay, ESFPs. ESFPs are characterized by a level of showmanship and possess an entertaining and performative nature. Being in the spotlight for them is not just natural, it's actively desirable. They can feed off it and thrive in that kind of energy. I remember someone once talking about Bill Clinton. They said that he had the ability to charm anyone one-on-one and win them over, even people who might have been his political opposition. He had that magnetism and charisma. ESFPs often have that in abundance. It's that ability to manage the energy between two people in an interaction. I think ESFPs match up well with the stereotypical grandiose narcissist. Self-confident, forceful, and not as sensitive as some of the other variants. I can very much see them being the archetypical Hollywood actor or celebrity, someone who is known for being known. So let's put ESFPs with their fellow SE-DOMs in Grandiose. Let's do ENTJ. I will do whatever it takes to get what I want. That could be a very standard ENTJ mindset, let alone a narcissistic one. I think that I would place them in the malignant category out of these four. An extreme ENTJ narcissist could be a literal dictator. I mean, I'm pretty sure there have been quite a lot of them actually. That imbalance between the dominant TE and the inferior FI can make them cold, calculating, and completely devoid of respect for the individuality of other people. That is a dangerous recipe indeed. There is going to be a level of aggressiveness and power hungriness to this type of narcissist. ENTJs have the ability to ascend through power hierarchies anyway, so when you add this to them having an innate grandiosity, you can imagine why they would be a scary prospect to get in the way of, or be on the wrong side of. Many people can't even imagine something like a malignant narcissist could even exist, so people often don't see them coming until it's too late. Malignant narcissist plus ENTJ is just kind of terrifying. Okay, ISTJ. ISTJs are really difficult to place when it comes to these groups. There is this stereotype of them being people who play by the rules and really take heed of conventional wisdom. As a result, they might get into situations where they are following the blueprint that is supposed to work, and if it doesn't, and they see other people becoming successful by breaking the rules, that could lead to resentment. So if you have an ISTJ narcissist, it might be of the covert variety. This notion of, I did everything right, yet I didn't get what I deserve or am entitled to, could be applicable. Let's put them in covert for now. Okay, INTJ. I feel like dark INTJs are very easy to envision since they make up 99% of fictional villains. It's almost a trope at this point, the INTJ evil mastermind. They have their grand schemes and Machiavellian plots, and the people that they ally with to get there are just like chess pieces to be made use of, then discarded when no longer necessary. I wouldn't describe INTJs as aggressive exactly. Well, perhaps they can be thought of as intellectually aggressive, especially when they are dead set on a particular goal or outcome. They can pursue it with an almost pathological intensity, one that you wouldn't want to get in the way of. Since INTJs don't value FE to begin with, they can come across as cold just by virtue of that. The moment you start pushing them up the narcissistic or psychopathic spectrum, that becomes even more scary. I think I'm going to put INTJs in the malignant category. Okay, ENTP. Lots of ENTP narcissists in fiction tend to be pretty extreme. Just like ESTPs, their third slot FE can definitely have a certain charm to it, a charm that could be glib and superficial in this context. Also, FE is something that they like to satisfy. Getting recognition is important to them. To be grandiose about it, genius needs an audience. Also, having FI as their blind spot means they're already one step closer to being able to detach from their deeper underlying values and motivations. Those things are often related to internal drives as opposed to externalizing them in some form. I think it's easier for certain types to possess an ego, and ENTPs are right up there, since they're often just good at lots of things. To me, they are the archetypical polymaths. I'm going to put them in Grandiose. I can already see a trend of the EP types in that category. Okay, ESFJs. I think ESFJs would be in the same category as ENFJs, as fellow FE-DOMs. ESFJs are often thought of as masterful social movers and shakers, people who act as connection points between different groups and can really catalyze interactions. I find this notion of a type's archetype remaining similar, but the motivation behind it changing depending on whether they are a normal or dark version of a type to be quite fascinating. I think that a narcissistic ESFJ would have the same kind of vibe of being caregivers, focused on giving people good social experiences just in order to make themselves look impressive, as opposed to actually caring about the people in question. ESFJs would be expert social climbers. I can imagine them charming their way into certain social circles, then completely dropping the people when they were no longer of use. constantly upgrading the perceived quality of the people around them. I think ESFJs have to go in the communal variant. Okay, INFJ. The archetype of a narcissistic INFJ that comes to mind would be something along the lines of a thought leader or even spiritual leader, masquerading under the pretense of bringing about positive change and helping people, whereas in reality it might be a personality cult. I think they would make use of their people skills in a more malevolent or exploitative way. They would have this kind of Svengali-like puppet master vibe, concealed behind a veneer of gentle leadership. Even by narcissistic standards, I think that the INFJ brand of it would be insidious. I could see why they might be put into the covert category, but I'm leaning towards them being more likely to be communal narcissists. They are often best placed when they are interacting with people and offering some kind of guidance to them. So I'll put them in communal. Okay, ISFJs, will they be joining the rest of the high FE users? So whenever I'm trying to give out advice to ISFJs, inevitably this notion of making sure to get the credit they deserve comes up a lot. I believe I've said it on many occasions before, but it's important to know which archetypical role suits you best in life. If you naturally don't desire the spotlight, for example, and would rather be a more supportive kind of person, there's no reason why that can't translate into being very successful in whatever way you define it. Being more of a giver is something that always runs into the risk of being overlooked. An ISFJ gone dark is the type to make their spouse their favorite meal and lace it with some poison as revenge for years of being neglected and overlooked. I think I'm going to put them in the covert category. Okay, ENFPs. Bit of a tricky one to place with these groups. ENFPs are kind of always hard to place, actually. I think that a narcissistic ENFP would be one who is enamored with their own brilliance, versatility, and talents. After all, lots of their natural abilities are quite rewarded in modern day life, such as being creative and innovative. I can picture them being revolutionaries, pushing forward under the guise of reforming, reimagining, and updating the status quo, whereas in reality, it's more about them. They want to be the face of the revolution and have people wearing t-shirts of their likeness. Sometimes in possession of a neurotic zaniness, they can certainly take people on quite a ride through Chaosville, should they wish. To complete the set of EPs, I'm going to put them in the Grandiose group. The Grandiose group. Maybe that's what I should refer to the EPs as from now on. Okay, ESTJs. I think I would group these in with their fellow TE Dom brethren. These are the belligerent bosses, prone to dishing out some 9-to-5 sadism when they can, happy to steamroller people when required in order to get the job done. The hardest of taskmasters, who will push you to breaking point. You get the idea. I think the malignant narcissist goes around thinking about everyone. How can you help me today? That's like something you'd expect to hear on a narcissistic hotline. A lot of reasons are going to be the same as the ones for ENTJs, to be honest. ESTJs can be a naturally aggressive type, which would line up very well with the malignant category. Okay, INFPs. I think the particular INFP path to narcissism would be of the covert complexion. This notion of them being a tortured artist who should have made it, but didn't, is definitely an archetype they can fall into. Easily looking like the victim in a scenario, garnering the sympathy of the people around them, being martyrs for their particular cause. INFPs at their best can sometimes make use of this tendency to feel like or be outsiders, outcasts, and misunderstood. It's a consequence of that FI-TE imbalance, trying to make peace with their individuality and society's propensity to stamp that out slowly and methodically. It affords them a unique perspective on things. They can see things other people don't. So that's the positive incarnation of it. A more negative slant would be to just exist in that state without doing anything productive with it, essentially vilifying society, the system, or the man, and using that as a scapegoat for why they haven't gotten what they wanted, or in this situation, why they didn't get what they feel like they are entitled to. So I think I'll put them in the covert group. Okay, INTPs. Very similar boat to their fellow TI DOMs, the ISDPs, I think. INTPs are people who, even in their healthiest forms, struggle to manifest what's going on in their heads in reality. That's mainly because so much is going on in their heads. When you're focused on ideation, that often, by definition, comes at the expense of implementation. When you add that to the fact that so much of getting anywhere in life comes down to seemingly superficial things, marketing, style over substance, people skills, it's a recipe for frustration for INTPs. You can get a long way in life by doing FE and SE-like things, two functions that INTPs struggle with a lot. So if they're going to be narcissistic, then I can see them being of the covert variety, feeling like the world hasn't appreciated their ideas, their insight, or brilliance. ISFPs. ISFPs seem rightly represented in certain performative professions and fields, equally capable in the aesthetic arts and sports. Both are arenas that lend themselves well to being admired by lots of people. So there's that attraction and blueprint there. However, regardless of whether a type might be well suited to a thing, not everybody manages to make it. Just like INFPs, they can struggle with not fitting in, or actually not even wanting to fit in, with lots of societal structures and expectations. This can lead to a feeling of being victimized by the structures in society, like the system is actually set up against them in an almost conspiratorial way. Again, that makes me lean towards putting them in the covert narcissist category. If you are a regular viewer of this channel, or you would like to see more videos like this one, then please comment, like, and most importantly, subscribe. All of those things make a big difference to the video and the channel overall.